Cesare walked so Timothy Chalamet could run. Hello, and welcome back to my channel. If you are a subscriber, thank you so much for being here and thank you for all the support. If you are new here, hello, welcome! My name is Marie and I hope you enjoyed today's video and maybe subscribe. As promised, I am continuing with my month-long of spooky content, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite Halloween films, The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Let's get started. The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari is widely considered a classic among the horror community. Released in 1920, it is still the topic of much discourse among film circles everywhere. While I could spend an entire video discussing and dissecting its artistic and aesthetic values, I really want to focus today's video on why it's so impactful 100 years later. I want to discuss why it's ingrained in people's minds so long after it's been released, because that doesn't happen to a lot of old films. While we do have a classic film canon, many silent films are actually excluded from this canon. So what makes Dr. Caligari so special and so timeless? I do want to preface this video by saying that there will be many spoilers. This film is over 100 years old. However, if you have not seen it yet, I will leave a link down to a free YouTube version of it. So if you haven't watched the film but are watching my video, I strongly suggest you go watch the film first. That way I'm not spoiling anything for you. As with most of these videos, I will also be using photographs as opposed to film clips because I don't want to get a copyright strike. So what exactly is The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari? Caligari is considered to be one of the few truly expressionist films ever made. Released in 1920, it was directed by Robert Wiene and written by Hans Janowitz and Karl Mayr, and it was initially met with mixed reception. Janowitz and Mayr took inspiration from their experiences throughout World War I to write this film, and this is evident just by the scenic design of this film. I know I said I wasn't going to talk about it, but I do need to for a moment. The scenic design and the set of this film really do almost feel like a war-torn village. The film starts with Francis, who is our narrator and our protagonist, recounting a very disturbing tale, and that's when the flashback begins. This film is mostly told through flashback structure, with scenes in the beginning and in the end taking place in the present time. The flashback begins with Francis and his friend Alan good-naturedly competing for the affections of their friend Jane. The three then go to a town fair where they encounter the mysterious Dr. Caligari, who is kind of a suspicious figure. It is at this town fair where Dr. Caligari introduces his somnambulist, I will never get that word right, Cesare. Caligari wakes Cesare up and the townspeople begin to ask Cesare questions. He is almost like a fortune teller and can see the future, according to Caligari. Alan, being the bold young college lad that he is, goes up to Cesare and asks him, "When will I die?" Cesare replies with, "You die at dawn." And guess who dies at dawn? Yeah, that's right, Alan dies at dawn. Who would have thought? Alan's murder isn't the first murder to happen in the town since the town fair began, so Francis becomes very suspicious of Caligari and Cesare. Things only further escalate when Cesare attempts to kidnap Jane. However, his kidnap attempt is unsuccessful and Cesare actually collapses and dies. Francis is very freaked out about the entire situation, as you can imagine, so he decides to do some spying on Caligari. He discovers that Caligari is actually the director of an asylum, and that Caligari is also extremely obsessed with the story of an 11th century monk named Caligari who also used a somnambulist named Cesare to commit murders. And that's when the wheels start to turn for Francis. He realizes that this Caligari wants to become that Caligari, and this Caligari has been using his Cesare to commit murders in his town. So Francis reports Caligari to the authorities, and then Caligari gets dragged away into his own asylum in a straitjacket. The end. Right? Not quite. This is where the plot twist comes in. Now, I want to preface this plot twist by saying that by this point, this twist has been overdone to death, but in 1920, it was new and shocking and really had seldom been done before, if ever. Dr. Caligari paved the way for many of the modern tropes that we see in horror movies today. Now, here's a twist. Francis, Jane, and Cesare are all actually patients at the asylum. However, Francis's entire story has supposedly not happened. And I say supposedly simply because I want to explore that theme a little bit later in this video. So the entire story that we just saw was Francis's rabid imagination and hallucinations. It is Francis who is actually dragged away in a straitjacket at the end of the film, and Caligari, who is a doctor at the asylum, swears to cure him. Pretty shocking for a 1920 audience who had never quite seen something like this before. We want to trust the narrator, but in cases of an unreliable narrator, can we really believe anything that has just happened? Even watching the film today, it's still quite a shocking plot twist, even though we've seen it done many times before. That is because this plot twist is done so well that it's very unexpected upon the first watch. And even someone like me who has watched this movie to death is still shocked by the ending of this film every time I watch it. Roger Ebert has dubbed The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari the first true horror film. And while I have had many arguments with film buffs who say, no, Caligari wasn't the first horror film, perhaps they are right, but it is the first very influential horror film to exist. Even today, we can see direct references and inspirations in media from Dr. Caligari. Take a look at Tim Burton's entire body of work. It's Dr. Caligari. Even musicians such as the Bauhaus and Rob Zombie have used Dr. Caligari's aesthetic and themes in their own work. Film noir, which was very popular in the 40s and the 50s, takes direct inspiration from the Expressionist movement and Dr. Caligari. A lot of the lighting and set techniques used in Caligari were transferred over to film noir. And it makes sense because a lot of Expressionist film directors did move from Germany to the United States before the Second World War. According to film reviewer Danny Peary, Dr. Caligari is also considered to be the first true cult film and a precursor to art house film. And this makes sense if you've watched Dr. Caligari and then you watch an art house film. Look at the lighting, look at the set, look at the themes of confusion and anger and the very soul of humanity, and you'll see that they're both very intertwined. And Dr. Caligari is a cult film. Even today, we have midnight screenings for Caligari. Perhaps it is not in the same level as Rocky Horror or The Room, which is a masterpiece, by the way, but it is still a cult film, and it has a cult following. Think about it, it's the oldest cult film to ever exist. It has gone from generation to generation to generation, and it has amassed a large following of fans. That is a true testament of a well-made film. The themes of obsession and brutal authority explored in Dr. Caligari are also timeless. Think about the time that we're living in today. Wouldn't you agree that themes of obsession, oppression, and authority are quite relevant to today's society? Post-World War I Germany was ravaged by the war. They were hungry, they were extremely poor, mass inflation was skyrocketing and making it unable for people to even buy a loaf of bread, and artists funneled their frustration and their confusion and their fear through art. In Caligari, Caligari is subjugating his patients. He's using Cesare, one of his patients, to commit his murders for him. That is pretty manipulative if you ask me. And it also displays the abuse of authority beautifully. The ending leaves you thinking, well, is Francis really that unreliable? What exactly is happening in this asylum? There are so many unanswered questions. In a way, you're left to side with Francis. There is something so genuine and so honest about the way he expresses himself. While his story may not be true, perhaps what is happening with authority is true. Dr. Caligari is fresh. It's very interesting to say that about a 100-year-old movie, but it is. Unlike a lot of silent films that have become dated, Caligari isn't dated. You could take the plot of Dr. Caligari and put it in a modern day film and not have to rewrite it at all. Janowitz and Mayer truly wrote a timeless classic that is appropriate, suitable, and relatable with all eras. Before I get to the root of this thesis, I want to talk about Conrad Veidt, who played Cesare in Dr. Caligari. And this is going to be a little bit of a spiel, but I think it is important to mention this. Conrad Veidt was a very successful actor in Germany who just happened to be married to a Jewish woman. The rise of Hitler made things difficult for his wife. While Conrad Veidt was not Jewish himself, when Goebbels' race purity questionnaires came out, which first of all, I have many issues with, Veidt wrote that he was Jewish when he wasn't. Knowing that this would get him blacklisted, Veidt didn't care. He said that he wasn't going to stand for the oppression of his wife or people that he cared about. He was a huge advocate of the German Jewish community and was very outspoken on being an anti-Nazi. This was his form of protest. This was brave of him. He could have been killed. He was so selfless when it came to his own career because he hated seeing people's livelihoods and rights being stripped away. He decided to speak up against it and condemn it. Knowing that Conrad Veidt did that makes watching watching this film, all the better, and his performance all the better. He truly was a talented actor, and from everything I've read about him, he was a lovely human being as well. And I think his story is very important and needs to get out. It's a story of bravery and it's inspiring. Thank you, Conrad Veidt. So why has Caligari remained so popular to this day? Is it due to its aesthetic value that is still felt in media today? Yes. Is it because of its timeless themes that now more than ever are so relevant to society? Absolutely. But also, it's just a good film. There is a reason it has survived so long, and it's regarded as one of the best films of all time because it's well done, it is well made, it is well performed, and it is memorable. It is a great film, and if you haven't watched it yet, first of all, why did you watch this video without watching the film? I warned you at the beginning, but if you haven't, check it out. It is a great Halloween time film, and it will leave you thinking, if nothing more. And maybe scare you along the way, who knows? Watch it and find out. And that is it for today's video. If you enjoyed today's video and you aren't already subscribed, subscribe, turn the notification bell on, and leave a big thumbs up on this video. If you would like to see more of my sweaty, poorly lit face, consider following me on TikTok and on Instagram. I post on TikTok 5 times a week, and I do live streams every Monday and Friday. And I post on Instagram whenever I want because I have no idea how Instagram works. If you would like to see more exclusive behind the scenes content, including film analyses, please consider becoming a patron. Videos and projects like the ones you see on my YouTube channel are made possible by my patrons. So if you can and you'd like, please consider becoming a patron today. I will leave my link tree with all my social media down in the description box below. Have an amazing week, and remember to vote if you are able to. I will see you next week with more spooky content. Bye!